Welcome to this month's A Garden in Every Season tour. May is shaping up to be a very busy month. We've got lots of wildflowers in the Botanical Garden and there's always more to come. For this particular month I wanted to focus on Trillium species, so I hope you all enjoy.
Alright, and to start off, again, before we've gotten into the Botanical Garden, we have our May-apples, and the scientific name is PODOPHYLLUM peltatum, and the specific epithet that peltate is actually in reference to the leaves. So as you can see, the leaves are undivided. They're kind of just a whole plate or shield, and that's what peltate means. So that's what that is in reference to. And a lot of them are coming up. Most of them are either fully up or just about to flower. So definitely look for those throughout the month of May if they're in your area. And they spread rhizominously. They love dappled sun. They can thrive in shade as well. And they're just a beautiful plant. But one of my personal favorites, which is right next to it, is Lily of the Valley. It's Convallaria pseudomajalis. So we have a native species, native to North America, but there's also an Asian species as well. And I am personally not able to distinguish the two, but they both flower around the same time. And what's really nice about this species are the just very soft bell kind of campanulate flowers, and if you can get up really close, they have a sweet fragrance to them as well, and they're another wonderful ground cover. They're really one of my personal favorite plants, spring flowering plants, so if you have the opportunity to plant it in your garden, I definitely would. If you can't, then certainly come see our clumps here. We've got the poppies alongside the May-apples, and we have some violets in the bed as well, and things are really waking up as far as spring flowering plants go, which is just a really nice sight. The weather so far has been pretty seasonably warm, I would say, and they are, of course, calling for rain, but by and large it's been just really beautiful weather, really nice spring days, temperatures in the mid-60s, just really pleasant overall. And just along here on the path, we have anemone QUINQUEFOLIA. It's in the Ranunculaceae family, so that's the same family as the buttercups. And if you look closely at the white flowers, they'll definitely resemble yellow buttercups. And those will soon pass, and you'll be left with the foliage, which the specific epithet kind of refers to this with the translation of being 5, so you can tell that there's these 5 leaflets, and it just makes a very nice soft textured ground cover. And it's also sometimes referred to as windflower. And here we have a Jack-in-the-pulpit. It's in the arum family, and with all of those like family members, you have the spathe, which is what's sort of that rounded edge, and that's covering what's tucked inside, which is the spadix. There's also some color variation, so sometimes the spade will be purple, kind of striped white and purple, or kind of brownish, but they do like moist areas, and they are a little bit more tricky to spot just because some of them can really blend in, but do keep your eyes out. But another plant that's flowering along the creek here that I really wanted to talk about as well is the bishop's cap, MITELLA DIPHYLLA. It's in the Saxifragaceae family, but a really interesting distinct feature about this plant is the fringed petals. So you really have to get up close to see, but there are 5 distinct petals that are fringed, and the flowers are these kind of campanulate. Again, that's a bell-shaped flower, and you can kind of see them there, but they're really, really beautiful, but they like these rich, moist woodland areas. Another plant that I wanted to talk about that's in the same family as the bishop's cap, that's flowering alongside the creek, is Tiarella cordifolia, the foam flower. Again, it's in the same family, but something that I personally love about this plant are the peach-colored anthers, and I just think that's a very fun characteristic. But this plant does really well in shade and dappled sunlight as well. It's a wonderful herbaceous perennial. There's lots of cultivars as well that are, available at garden centers. I think it's a really wonderful plant. And again, it does do well in moist sites. So I mentioned that I wanted to talk about trilliums, and I think we're really lucky in that we have roughly about 38 distinct trillium species in North America, and there are typically 2 groups that trilliums are divided into. There are the pedicellate trilliums, which I will get into what the pedicel is, and then there are the sessile trilliums. And these are actually kind of subgenera, but that's usually when, folks are going out and trying to identify different trillium species, which can be difficult because they hybridize in the wild very frequently. But those are the 2 groups. And they spread rhizomatously, which is just an interesting fact. And rhizomes are these modified stems, right? And so the leaves just shoot up from there. And there's been some debate in the kind of botany world as far as if they are true leaves, but for all intents and purposes of this video, we're going to just refer to them as leaves. But getting back to the pedicel, a pedicel is essentially just the stem that is bearing the flower. So with regards to trillium species, that can be really long or really short, or again, in the case of a completely different group, right, it can just be simply non-existent. As I mentioned, there's a lot of trillium species that tend to hybridize with one another, but typically, you'll have flower or petal colors that are these maroon patches here. And this is a distinct species. This is Trillium erectum, but there's another Trillium erectum that's the variety album, which has white flowers, but this is the red Trillium, so these are these very beautiful, more maroon colored flowers, and this is one of the pedicellate Trilliums, and again, it's more erect, obviously, because as you all saw just in those previous clips, some Trilliums hang below the leaves while some are propped up above. But another interesting feature about Trillium species is their seeds and how their seeds get spread around and how they can, persist as a species. And that is all due to elaisomes. So elaisomes are these fleshy seeds, and if you kind of break the word down, elio is actually, it kind of translates to oil, and so the oil has lots of like fats and lipids which are attractive to ants. So the ants will then take the seeds, and then, by doing so, the Trillium seeds are being dispersed so that they can be sown, and I think it's roughly 4 to 7 years for a Trillium to flower when it's sown from seeds. So it's a very long process, but I think it's a very interesting way that these plants have grown to attract ants that come to get the seeds and then spread them around, and the Trilliums can persist. So I did want to touch on our mountain doghobble, the LEUCOTHOE. It's in the Ericaceae family, which holds a lot of different species, in particular vaccinium, so that's our blueberries, and the flowers are, the same as the blueberry flowers that then develop later on. And I think another feature that's interesting to observe are the kind of zigzagged patterns of the stems. Nothing super special, just something interesting that I've observed, and I think that, again, because so often when we're hiking through these rhododendron thicketed areas and there's LEUCOTHOE in the understory, it's kind of easy to just overlook it, but they are in flower, and I have noticed personally that the flowers have a slight fragrance to them, so when you're out and about hiking and you happen to see a doghobble in flower, just give it a smell, let us know if it's fragrant for you. And another interesting thing that I think is cool about the Ericaceae family as it relates to more of our native species, our mountain laurels, so the Kalmia species that will be in flower within the next couple of months, those are also in the same family. We've got VIBURNUM cassinoides, which is a bog plant that's leafing out right now. Some nice colorful new growth. And I just wanted to pop over here in this little bog area to check on the status of the skunk cabbage to see how it's progressed since flowering. But another plant that's popped up right alongside it is the white-HELLEBORE, VERATRUM VIRIDE. I've also heard the common name referred to as false hellebores. The flowers, this plant doesn't flower until summer. I don't feel that the flowers really resemble hellebores, and neither do the leaves, so I'm not sure where that common name comes from. But in speaking on the leaves, and you can see, again, especially with the contrast of the skunk cabbage, is these very deeply veinated leaves, and they're very broad, and I just think it's a very interesting texture. The leaves also sort of wrap around, almost like a sheath on the stem, which is also very interesting. But it likes, again, similarly with everything that's here in the bog, wet, very moist areas and these seepages. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's in the Melanthaceae family as well. And just down here we also have another bog plant, and that is the Appalachian bluet. I say bog, it's really, they just prefer wet sites, not necessarily a typical bog plant per se, but a very sweet flower nonetheless. Down here we have a magnolia popping up, and there's some more of the wood anemone. Got some nice violets down here. This is Viola primulifolia, and there's a lot of other native violet species that are in flower right now, but the specific epithet, the primulifolia, is referencing primulas, and this is one of the white flowering violets that we have. Just a very sweet plant. I wanted to check on our yellow root. I really think that yellow root is underestimated as far as landscaping plants are concerned. It's a really great species, and I know that I spoke about it already at length in last month's tour, but again, and as you noticed with the skunk cabbage, I always think it's interesting to kind of go back through as the season progresses to see, how plants are doing, what's flowering, what's changed, and all of that. We've got some beautiful ferns popping up. I think that the fiddleheads are, just as much of a significant interest over the fronds, especially in springtime. The last plant on our tour for this month is Cardamom DIPHYLLA. It's in the Brassicaceae family, so that's the brassicas, which is like your cauliflowers, your broccolis, your kales. The flowers are very similar in that regard. And the specific epithet, the DIPHYLLA, that actually is Greek, and it sort of roughly translates to two leaves. And the common name, toothwort, is in reference to the kind of toothed margins that you can see on the leaves as well.
Thank you all very much for joining me. I hope you all get a chance to see the gardens in person, and please let us know what spring flowering plants are in your home garden or wherever you're at. And thank you very much for watching.